Hey, what's up? Hello. I hope all of you are doing well. Today's review is of a book that I have been anticipating since it came out and never got around to reading. Surprise, surprise. But it is a book by Sarah Gruen, who is the noted author of Water for Elephants, as well as many other novels, apparently, that I just found from reading the inside couple pages of this book. But this review is of her book At the Water's Edge. So I picked this up at the library after leaving it sitting on the shelves for about 4 or 5 trips, and I was really glad that I did, because this is a book about a woman named Madeline Hyde who is married to a man named Ellis, and they are part of this high society crowd in Philadelphia in the 1940s during the Second World War. And on the evening of New Year's Eve, she and Ellis get pretty drunk, and they have something of an argument out in the middle of a party, and everyone hears them, and they make fools of themselves, and the word gets back to Ellis's parents. They are the ones who are financially supporting him and Maddie, and they aren't too pleased with what they've heard, and this fight ensues, and Ellis smears his father's name, and they are cut off from them. They are kicked out of their home, they are cut off financially, and Ellis and Maddie have to leave with whatever money they have and find some place to go. Ellis's father was a colonel in the Great War, and he spent a lot of time over in the Scottish Highlands searching out the Loch Ness Monster, and he committed quite a scandal over there because it was discovered that he faked some pictures and some footage of the Loch Ness Monster, which had gotten him much fame and much notoriety, and then it was discovered that they were fake, and he was smeared. What Ellis decides the best thing to do in this situation, now that his horrible mother and father have cut him and his wife off, is to go to Scotland, take some real pictures of this Loch Ness Monster, clear his father's name, and win sort of his own pride as the colonel's son back, and hopefully they will reinstate him to the family fortune and back into Philadelphia society. They wind up going over to the Scottish Highlands. Maddie isn't really sure that she wants to go and puts up a lot of a fight to it, but they wind up over there with their friend Hank, who is sort of just buddy-buddy, 2 peas in a pod. They've been friends since the beginning, and Hank has just always sort of been the third piece in Maddie and Ellis's married life. And so the 3 of them go over to Scotland, and they find this little tiny town, and they sort of take up residence at this local inn, and they go off on these daily pursuits of trying to get interviews from people who have seen the monster and want to talk to them about it, and to try and film it out on the lake itself. This book is from Maddie's perspective, and as the story unfolds, we see that she is not entirely happy with her situation. She learns a lot of secrets about this tiny, tiny little town that they're in, and starts to uncover those secrets within her peers and the people that she interacts with every day, which then leads to her uncovering some secrets about her own life and her own past, that of her husband and her own family, which she reveals to you as the story goes on. And it gets just a little bit messy. I really enjoyed Water for Elephants by Sarah Gruen. I think it was the first book I had ever read in a book club, and I really enjoyed that and that story and the way that she wrote. This started off, and I was a little bit bored with the writing. It didn't feel exceptionally complex, and I understood all of the characters, but I thought it was just a little heavy-handed with all of the cliffhanger chapter sentences at the very ends of the chapters, and it just felt sort of like she was dropping the story on you again and again. But then it definitely picked up in the last 200 pages. It grew to be faster and more intricate, and you could definitely see the lies that were being woven, and Maddie was starting to come into her own a little bit more. Madeline Hyde as a character is very interesting to figure out. It's very, very clear that she comes from a tortured background and has been given this wonderful life in society by marrying Ellis. And she starts to understand what she has been given, and her world that she's been living in starts to unravel a little bit in her mind, and she realizes that she can't really do anything. Someone has always put her clothes away, someone has always made her food, someone has always driven her everywhere, and she realizes that she can't do things. She can't do simple chores. She doesn't know how to slice bread even, and the people that she spends all day with, because as the wife of Ellis, while he and Hank go off searching for the monster, she is asked to remain at home and just sort of sit by the fire and wait for them to return. And in that time, she makes friends with the people working in the inn, and she says, I wish there was something I could do. I don't even know how to knit. I can't do anything. What can I do? Can you teach me? And she starts to learn how to do basic household chores, and she starts to come into her own and realize all of the privilege that she's had. And while I think that that is an excellent thing for her to learn, she's very much internally struggling with recognizing what she is from and recognizing what she can be if she just was given the opportunity to try. I applaud the fact that she does try to change, but the struggle I had watching her make that change was just cringeworthy a lot of the time. But she is very introspective and self-reflective and starts to understand the privilege that has been given to her, and she does make an effort to try to change it, so I very much applaud her in that sense. Her husband Ellis is the worst sort of character, and he goes hand in hand with Hank, who is a lot like Ellis, but is a little bit nicer, and I wish we had gotten to see a little bit more of Hank in the story, because I think he provided that much needed balance for Ellis a lot of the time when Ellis was being a brute and Hank stepped in and said, hey man, what are you doing that for? I think we could have benefited from more of that, because the more Ellis came on the scene, it just made Maddie's situation feel even more tragic, and it was tragic from the beginning, and once she started to realize it, it just felt like we were being dumped with more and more tragedy as the story wore on. No doubt my favorite characters in this book were Meg, Anna, and Angus, who are the three main Scots that we meet who run this small inn, and they are just great and hilarious and have the sharpest of wits. They were some of the sharpest people and had a really great outside perspective on the three Americans that sort of tumble into their midst, and really aids in Maddie's self-reflection of herself and her situation. The story pulls along really nicely. Like I said, once you get to those last 200 pages, the first 100 or 50 or so are a little bit hard to slog through. Once you get into the story and it gets moving, it's very enjoyable. Like, it's well written. I sort of saw everything coming. If there was something to be predicted in this story, I definitely saw it. I think this book was laid out so that the reader would make connections before the characters did, which I'm fine with. I enjoyed knowing those things ahead of them. The ending felt kind of short. I wish we had gotten a little bit more aftermath of the closing to this book, but at the same time it sort of hits the punctuated notes of a lot of other pieces in the story, so I guess it kind of fits. I will say that the love triangle in this book that blossoms is a little bit hard to read, not because it's poorly done, but because there is a very abusive angle of it, which I think is something to be aware of. I think it was done well. It wasn't exceptionally over-dramatized. There was a little bit of that, but not to an unbearable point. And it's just something to note if you go ahead and read this. There's some definite emotional abuse that takes place in here, and whether that's a trigger warning for you or not, I will leave to you to decide. Overall, I give this book 3 out of 5 stars. At the Water's Edge by Sarah Gruen. She does use the title of the book 3 times in the same chapter, which is just something I have to mention because it felt like a little too much. But if you liked Water for Elephants, I think you will also enjoy this book. Put a comment below if you have also read it, because I would love to chat about it with you. As always, thanks for watching. All the things you might want to know are in the doobly-doo. I hope you're having lovely weeks and lovely lives, and we will see you very soon.